Adopt Technology's The Elephant in the Room podcast brings you gigantic tech stories that inspire. These are creators, innovators, and change makers. Every episode, our guests embody one of the core values that makes Adopt so different from every other tech company. Much like an elephant, guests on this show are emotionally intelligent and ready to make a gigantic impact on the world. Hey everyone, I'm Carrie Pena. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm in studio right now with Sam Bertram, who is the co-founder of OnePointOne. This is vertical farming revolutionized. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So you just moved your company from San Jose to Arizona.
That's correct.
Tell us about OnePointOne.
Sure. So OnePointOne is a technology company that develops indoor vertical farming technology. We develop a wide variety of technologies to grow plants to their greatest potential. Vertical farming is the process of growing plants indoors. So we essentially developed a brand new system to grow plants using robots, AI, and a variety of other technologies.
You have to share with the audience how all of this came about.
Sure.
Really, when you were in school and you were
Yes.
doing a thesis.
Yes.
And then suddenly this blew up big.
The way I describe the journey here is like a 3-year-old's birthday party with a blindfold and a piñata. That's how I describe my path here. No, my brother and I, my brother is an exceptional person. I'm an extraordinarily ordinary person. We both came to the United States to play tennis when we were 18. In 2011, and then he played in Santa Barbara. I played at Santa Clara, and then he went to Germany to do his technical university, do his master's degree in power engineering at the Technical University of Munich. He won the SpaceX Hyperloop competition. He was the first propulsion engineer at a vertical takeoff and landing plane company. So that was all before the age of 24. But I just hit yellow fluffy balls around the court and did my master's in robotics. But really, what happened was. My brother and myself, both my parents are teachers. My brother and I have been sort of keenly aware of our mortality our whole lives. And we are just sort of this transient flesh vehicle that moves through life for 60 to 80 years and then we're gone. And we know that we've been afforded a massive number of blessings and resources, and we wanted to make sure that we could take what we have and multiply it into value for people typically who can't generate that same amount of value themselves. So essentially the question we came down to over and over again was, how do we make the greatest difference in the shortest period of time? That was the question. So we looked at nuclear power, we looked at transportation, desalination, education, all these kinds of things. And then we came across the statistic that 1.1 billion people began this millennium malnourished. And that was kind of the galvanizing moment where we thought, when you really sit on that, understand what one individual would suffer through malnourishment, and then multiply that by 3 times the population of the United States, you start to get an order of magnitude at least. So that was really the moment, that was the galvanizing moment where we really knew we have to do something to do with nutritional food. We then found out very quickly that plants are the basis of human nutrition. They're the basis of animal nutrition as well. So once we figured that out, we thought, okay, how do we currently grow plants? And essentially, I'm going through the pitch deck in my head right here. But we grow plants outdoors. And though it's a gift that 7.5 billion people eat every day, 821 million people don't. And 2.2 billion people eat too much of the wrong thing today. So when we figured out that the outdoor farm uses 70% of fresh water, is 70% of freshwater contamination, it is 95% of human land use, it's responsible for a huge amount of toxicity in waterways, all these kinds of things. The outdoor farm was not going to be the place where we were going to make the difference. And so we looked for other ways to produce plants, and we came across the concept of vertical farming. And that was in college. Both of us were still in college, and we saw that there is a massive opportunity here. And the most exciting part is that no one had cracked the code. So you've had billions of dollars of financings going into vertical farms, but still a single profitable vertical farm is elusive to the industry. So we found out that labor is the number one cost inside of these farms, labor and electricity. And so if we can develop technologies to drop those costs, especially proportionally against yield, we can develop a technology that grows a really wide variety of plants for a really wide variety of purposes and wide variety of people.
So when you presented this, it was your dissertation?
Yes, it was sort of my master's capstone, my master's thesis, yeah.
And so when did you know you had hit on something? I mean, did you get an A on the project? Please tell me.
I actually can't remember. I do remember frustrating a lot of people in the robotics lab because this little 110 volt pump would go on every 5 minutes and they kicked me out. It was really all along the way, in the beginning we saw the indication that this was an opportunity. But look, I mean, I was 23, 24 at the time. I knew nothing. I became intellectually conscious 5 years before that. I knew nothing. But we saw that at the very least, if over half the operating cost of these facilities is labor and we can significantly decrease that, we are in the range where these can be profitable for a wide variety of crops. So that sort of overarching thesis has existed since the beginning, and that has been a push and pull ever since. As we learn more about the cost of production, we go, oh, bloody hell, it's going to be more expensive. But then we learn more about, what aeroponics, for example, in our case, can do in terms of yield. And so it's just been this push and pull over the last 5 years or so. But to be honest, I've never been more convinced than I am today that this technology is going to make a massive, massive difference. On your website
is beautiful, by the way. I encourage people to go check it out. It's just so compelling. And the statements that you make there, though, they're very inspirational, and they make you want to pay attention. For instance, the challenges we face are perfectly clear. Doing nothing will cost us everything. Then you also say on there, OnePointOne is on a mission to unleash the power of plants on human health.
Bang.
And you are doing that. Tell folks where you're at right now with your company. I mean, you're hiring, you're growing, and there's some things that I know you can't even talk about that are in the works. Yeah, so we've raised about $60 million so far. We have about a little over 80 employees, some in California, some in Arizona, and some around the United States, actually some international as well. We've got a farm in San Jose, which is a sort of a full end-to-end demonstration of our technology, the vertical plane aeroponics, which I know means nothing to anyone, and also the robotics, demonstrating both of those things together. And then we're building a facility here in an 80,000 square foot warehouse in Avondale. So we've demonstrated the technology. We know what it can do. We're on the cusp of demonstrating that at a large scale. And then we take that farm that we're building in Arizona, in Avondale, and we start selling it around the world for a variety of purposes. So back to that point about unleashing the power of plants on human health, they're fundamental to nutrition. There's nothing more fundamental to your nutrition and therefore well-being, in my opinion, than plant-based foods. And then secondarily, it's not just nourishing people, it's healing them. And it's not healing them through nutrition, to spiderweb, I'm sorry. You can use plants as bioreactors. Now, the plant is essentially a bioreactor for producing the vitamins and minerals that we eat the plants for. But you can also trick the plants to produce other kinds of molecules, pharmaceutical-grade molecules. For example, COVID-19 vaccine, Ebola vaccine, rituximab, which is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma treatment. Huge numbers of these molecules can be produced inside of plants in a very effective manner. And so we are starting off with the leafy greens and the microgreens and the herbs, very nutritious, very good for you, moving on to the berries, and then moving eventually into the biopharmaceutical space. So we know that plants underpin human wellness, and we just need to figure out a way to get more people access to that sort of plant healing. Can you paint the picture for folks who are listening of what it looks like inside your operation? For folks who are listening, like, what is vertical farming? What does that look like? And you're on a large scale. It's incredibly impressive. Yeah. So, I mean, if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, obscure reference, I apologize. Those monoliths, that big, tall, 25-foot thing that's a foot deep and 4 feet wide. Imagine hundreds of those standing up, and there are plants growing out of either side, and the roots are growing into that big rectangular prism. And inside of that column, inside of that rectangular prism, you have an aeroponic mist. There's no soil. All there is just a mist, like you see at Safeway spraying the vegetables, and that mist has nutrients infused within it, and that's what the plant drinks from. And so that's on the inside of that column. And on the outside of the column, of course, where the leaves are growing out, you have lights, which are providing the photosynthetic energy. So you take that column, which has lights for the leaves and aeroponic irrigation for the roots, and then you multiply that out hundreds and hundreds of times. And then you have a fleet of robots that
run around the top of the facility, 20, 25 feet in the air, and perform the functions that a human being would otherwise perform. So the robot is responsible for moving the plants around the facility. The robot is responsible for visually inspecting the plants in multiple spectrum outside what human beings can see, for example. We're responsible for moving the lights, cleaning the infrastructure. So our goal is to build just essentially a box inside of a warehouse that pumps out the highest quality and quantity of plants that we possibly can.
Yeah, you say that building the most advanced plant production system on Earth is your goal.
Yes, it's beyond food, and that's what I was talking about with the biopharmaceutical side of things. It may start with food, but that's a very small part of this space.
So this podcast is all about gigantic tech stories that inspire. Did you set out to work in tech in a way that is inspirational and that helps people?
Not necessarily. You know, as I said with the pinata story, it just sort of, everything kept falling into my lap. No doubt I was pushing. No doubt John and I were pushing. Our whole company's pushing. But you know, we push and things continue to fall into our lap. I will say what you've outlined has become very important to me. So I spend as much time as I can at Santa Clara and at Stanford, wherever I can speak, just so I can get through to one student at a time. If there's 200 students in the room, 50 of them are on their phone, they don't care, they're not listening. You know, I want to get to those one or two where I say, guess what, you're going to be dead soon. Guess what, you've been afforded more resources than 99.99% of people on the planet. Do something. And that's the message I want to get across. So it's become part of it because I think that, personally, I think that the only thing that stands in your way is you, or the thing that predominantly stands in your way is you. We often sort of point here, there, I can't do this, that law, that person, my education, my upbringing, screw that, throw it away. It's you. Do something. And that's everything else is sort of superfluous.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who have great ideas, but who are scared of how to implement those ideas. Yeah. It can be a scary process navigating the unknown.
Yes, it can be. But this is what it often comes back to with my brother and myself, is that scary compared to what? It's relative. You're not a 16-year-old British boy in a trench in World War I with a 1 in 6 chance of being slaughtered in the next 20 minutes. You know what I mean? It's not that. It's not, you know, today, you have a similar chance of dying from breast cancer as you did from childbirth in the 1800s. It's not that. So it's all relative. The barriers that stand in your way are so dramatically inferior to the barriers that have stood in everyone's way for all of time that relatively the speed bumps you're going to run into are just nowhere near as high.
How does it feel having navigated this with your brother?
Oh, it's fortunate. People have positive and negative opinions about going into business with family, but he's an extraordinary guy, very, very smart, very even-tempered, especially when the pressure is on. But I think the main benefit of myself and my brother starting this business is that we can dispassionately discuss difficult things. So multiple times where I've made a mistake in his opinion in the past, he brings it up to me on the drive home. That's fine. I know he's not trying to subvert me. I know he's not trying to hurt my feelings. He's trying to make me better. So that sort of basic understanding, which is we have each other's backs, allows us to, I think, make more ground in less time.
So having worked in Silicon Valley and been in the tech industry, and you're very successful at a young age, do you think the tech industry gets a bad rap?
It depends. I think there are extremes. Just like anything, there are extremes. You know, people who think that technology is bad are wrong. People think that technology is just fundamentally good are wrong. If we want to go to a level of abstraction, technology is technology. It's what humans do with it that makes it good or bad. But no, I mean, if you look at what has caused the greatest percentage difference in per capita GDP over the last 200 years, it has been technological innovation. 200 years ago, everyone was on $1 a day. Now in the United States, I forget what the per capita GDP is, it's between $40,000 and $50,000. That's insane. And that's wealth creation. That's increasing the size of the pie. So technology has, here's the analogy. You're on an island. You need to eat every day. At the start of the time on an island, you spear 3 fish per day to eat. Then you develop a net. And so you only need to go out there once a day and you can do more with your time for the rest of the day. And then you develop a fridge or a cooling mechanism. So you only need to fish once a week. And so for the rest of the week, you're doing other stuff. That's how we grow the economic pie. So technology is very important to improving the quality of life of humans.
I'm curious, when you build a company like you're building and you're growing, you have you're hiring right now too, right? What kind of company culture are you trying to build when you're doing something that's intentional and that is to help people all over the world? How do you build a company culture that mimics that mission?
Some combination, some union of ideology and practicality. Not ideology in a sense, in a political sense in any way. It's ideology that, you know, we have a finite amount of time and we need to pump as much as we can into this business, and we need to eliminate as much ego as we possibly can when discussing things within the business. Human beings are human beings. You know, we have this idea that we want to, you know, leave your personal life at the door. Practically, that's just not the way that human beings work. But I think, you know, all that we could do, all that we had control over was how John and I particularly operate within the business. And from day one, John and I have been, I hope, sources of positivity, and inspiration might be going too far, but, you know, motivation maybe. The company culture is invaluable if you get it right, and very, very destructive if you get it wrong. So we've focused on that since day one. The main thing that I want, one of the main things that we screen for in the process, it's something that Elon speaks about from time to time, is he way overvalued the importance of intellect and way undervalued the importance of heart. And he's mentioned that multiple times. So what we try and do is say, does this person, one of the interview questions I ask people is, between 0 and 10, what do you think the average person's good intentions are? Some people think it's 2 out of 10. Everyone thinks that they're nefarious. Some people think it's 9.5 out of 10. So these kinds of questions give you a sense for where the person stands. And then, of course, credentials, intellect add on top of that. We need a basis of a good person who cares, with high motivation, who doesn't complain, who just wants to get things done.
If we were to fast forward right now 10 years and I was sitting down to do this interview, what would you like your story to be?
In 10 years, I would like our business to have touched over 100 million people. So that would be in the form of food, but that would also be in the form of medicines, vaccines, these kinds of things. I think that that's actually reasonable. Beyond that, the mission of our business is to grow the plants that nourish and heal 1.1 billion people. That's the goal. But I'm not sure that will happen in 10 years. But I think, I really do think if we come back here in 10 years that we will have touched the lives of 100 million people.
Sam, I can't thank you enough for coming down and sharing your story. And how are you liking Arizona so far?
Oh, I bloody love Arizona. It's like, what is it outside? It's like 82 degrees and almost winter time, mate. I can't complain at all. And everyone says 115 degrees is too hot. It's perfect.
You're not going to mind it?
It's perfect.
I can't wait to come and take a tour of your headquarters.
April.
It's developing, and we'll continue to report on your story. Such a pleasure to meet you and have you in studio today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it too.
Now it is time to talk about what we just heard. Ryan Traceman, who is the Chief Technology Officer from Adopt Technologies, is here with us in studio. I know you loved Sam's interview.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah.
What was your takeaway? You have a background in sustainability. What were the things that stood out to you the most?
Yeah, Sam is just a really inspiring guy. Just listening to him speak. Obviously, the technology and the promise of what they're looking to do at 1.1 is amazing, transforming the food system. And I mean, he so succinctly pointed out all these disparities in access to healthy food and the issues with conventional farming. So, I mean, just the overall promise of what they're looking to do is incredible. But then the technology and taking it next level, you know, with AI and robotics, and then the future promise of, medicine being created from this tech is amazing.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
You've been involved in several startups. How exciting is it to listen to someone like Sam, who's so humble? They've already gotten a large first round of seed funding, 60 million, I believe. Mm-hmm. what does that say about remaining humble yet building something massive?
Yeah, Sam's humility is really inspiring. He speaks so highly of his brother and not so much of himself, but clearly the guy's pretty incredible. I think a lot of his humility seems to come from he's so in touch with his mortality. And it's something you don't hear people speak about very often. How we're here for a short time and he just wants to maximize what he can do. And so it seems like ego is not a driving force for him. It's really about others and helping change the world.
What was it that he said that you felt really aligned with what you all do at Adopt Technologies? And of course, you wanted to sponsor this podcast to bring stories like Sam's to light.
Yeah, it's really just the transformation, right, that he wants to bring. And there's a lot of alignment, between our company and 1.1 and Sam in that way.
Since you're the chief innovation officer, you're obviously not afraid of innovation. So you can really absorb what he's talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really audacious goal that they have. I know it's a very challenging problem, growing plants not in soil. Just that problem alone, let alone scaling that and the AI and robotics. This is a very large challenge that they've set in front of themselves because they see the impact that it can have, and it's really inspiring.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for listening and watching. I'm Carrie Pena. Sam manages to hit points that are pretty deep, and a few of those points really struck you.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly how he mentioned our privilege in terms of history, right? The challenges that our ancestors have had, and the access to resources and the growing of the pie. So that was really profound, that that recognition of we have so much access regardless of your circumstances today, relative to people a few hundred years ago, and what we're able to do with that. That was really profound. It reminds me of Steven Pinker and his work. Just the recognition of actually how good things are relative to history right now.
How does that shape your work and life, given that you're a young entrepreneur with a lot of success at an early age?
Yeah, it was really just a good reminder, right? That I feel especially lucky, against just all these not against odds, not in my life. I haven't had a challenging life, but just the fact that I'm here, is extremely lucky. And so it's a reminder to sort of make the most of what we have to make the largest transformation and contribution to society.
I love that.